Tim Scott, one of the Republican presidential candidates, was on the debate stage and had a very interesting take on the Black family and history of this country. Now, when you hear him, and if you didn't know that he was a Black man on the stage, you would say, yes, this is a typical talking point from the Republicans. But considering he is a Black man from the South, it is very interesting to hear this perspective coming from his mouth, the mouth that's featured right there.
Taxes and literacy tests. We survived discrimination being woven into the laws of our country. What was hard to survive was Johnson's Great Society, where they decided to put money, where they decided to take the Black father out of the household to get a check in the mail, and you can now measure that in unemployment, in crime, in devastation. If you want to restore hope, you've got to restore the family, restore capitalism, and put Americans back at work together as one American family.
So Tim Scott mentioned Johnson's Great Society. And what happened in Johnson's Great Society? If you listen to Tim Scott, you would think that they were just giving money for welfare. And this like, bam, all of a sudden, Black men had to be kicked out the family. That is absolutely not what happened. Number one, what was going on in the 60s in America? America was basically on fire. Do they believe that we don't know anything about history? What was going on in the 60s? Women were still fighting for rights. Black folks were still fighting for the right to vote. The Great Migration was happening with Black people coming from the South all the way up to the North and going to the West. People know what happened during this time. It was very unstable in the United States. And even when people were migrating up north, there was still systemic racism throughout the whole country. There was redlining, keeping all of Black people and other minorities put into certain communities. There were predatory loans. There were Black people not being able to qualify for VA loans and get nicer houses. There were Black people not being able to qualify for loans to upgrade their communities. This is what was going on in the 60s. Black folks were not getting paid the amount of salary they needed to be able to survive. This was what was going on in the 60s. How many Black leaders were taken out of the community via pew pew during the 60s? How many Black people were unalived simply because they wanted to go to work or walk down the street or accidentally bumped into somebody? This is what was going on in the 60s. So simply acting like Johnson's Great Society was simply giving some money is absolutely asinine. And the only people that are clapping are the people that want to keep with revisionist history and don't really want to acknowledge the history of this country. And that goes to show the reason why certain people have a vested interest in keeping history classes sanitized in the United States. So this highlighted portion talking about the Great Society. The Great Society program became Johnson's agenda for Congress in January 1965. He was looking to aid education, attack on disease, Medicare, urban renewal, beautification, conservation, development of depressed regions, a wide-scale fight against poverty, control and prevention of crime and delinquency, removal of obstacles for the right to vote. They have been fighting for Medicare, so health care across the board for 50 some odd years in this country. And the reason why they didn't want Medicare, because they didn't want Black folks to have access to it. So that's the reason why all of us don't have access to it. Even paler complected people are impacted because they've been fighting this for so long. Talking about the urban renewal, beautification, and conservation development of depressed region is because of the redlining. They put all of certain communities in one tight area. That is the reason why many of our communities are crumbling. And that's the reason for crime and delinquency in many of these areas. That's the reason for poverty in many of these areas and why there are no jobs. When you talk about history, you need to flesh it out. You cannot just give little talking points. Well, you can give little talking points to certain people who are not educated in history, and they will just clap it up, like the people on these stages and the Republicans and the people who are anti-education, because they are anti-education for y'all, but they know the history that went along in this country. Anyways, when people oversimplify saying welfare took the black man out of the home, that's simply an oversimplification. It's very reductionist, and is literally not the only thing about the Great Society. If we lived in a country that had balance, equity, and equality, there wouldn't have been a need to prop up households with extra money. But the fact is, systemic racism kept wages depressed for black folks. Black women had to work outside the home and have always worked outside of the home simply because black men could not make enough money in this country to support the family without the woman going to work. Now, getting some extra money and the stipulations that the government put on it put families in peril at times, but that is not what ran families. That's not what ran families out. That's not what ran men out of the family. That's not it. So I just wanted to point that out to you because it was oversimplified, it's reductionist, and it was absolutely wrong. And it's wrong by omission. And the only reason that they're able to get away with being so reductionist and omitting certain things is because people don't know history. This is just me being me, showing Tim Scott, Republican from South Carolina, in third or fourth or fifth place. Who knows? We know that this man ain't going to win nothing, but I just wanted to show this picture again. Anyways, you guys go ahead, jump in the comment section. Let me know what you think of his words in that clip. Like, comment, share.